For decades, she's been the woman in the sketch, Jane Doe, an unidentified victim of a brutal rape and murder in 1998. She was left for dead in a grassy area off of US 27.
Probably the most tragic thing about this case is that we don't know who she is.
Now, that part of this mystery has been solved. Last year, the Broward Sheriff's Office profiled Jane Doe's case in an episode of Open and Unsolved. BSO cold case homicide detective Zach Scott detailed his mission to discover Jane Doe's identity and find her killer. After months of painstaking detective work and DNA analysis, there is a major breakthrough in this investigation. They've solved the question of who is Jane Doe.
We were able to find relatives, do the investigative legwork, and at the end of this, we were able to identify our victim.
Now, the focus is on solving the ongoing mystery of who killed her. DNA evidence continues to transform criminal investigations and is helping to solve seemingly unsolvable cases. In the case of Jane Doe, the evidence collected 25 years ago, before DNA testing was commonplace, has now put a name to the image forever etched in this drawing.
And we now have a name, and her name is Eileen Truppner.
Eileen Truppner is the woman left for dead, discovered by a boater on a weekend outing in December 1998. Eileen Truppner is a woman who had a family, children, and a life that ended in tragedy at the hands of an unknown killer. The clues from her crime scene formed the building blocks of the DNA evidence that revealed her identity.
Once we had Eileen's DNA, we were able to make contact with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They have a genetic genealogy analysis unit, and they were able to provide us with outstanding assistance. In this case, FDLE was able to track the family tree down to basically 3 sisters, and one of the sisters fell off the grid in '98 when our victim was discovered.
That led Detective Scott on a journey into genetics.
It's really just about following up on those leads on a different level. It's not just, tracking evidence and fingerprints. Now you're really doing detective work on families.
As he dug into Truppner's family tree, he soon discovered that when she died, Eileen had 2 children. But she endured significant postpartum depression after giving birth to each of her children, and her ongoing struggles with depression led her into a downward spiral and away from the family she cherished. Armed with this information, Detective Scott faced the challenge of conveying the confirmation of Eileen's identity to her family.
The upside is you're able to give them some answers. The downside is that you have to tell them, listen, she was the victim of a murder. And it's certainly not the outcome that they wanted.
I'm just sad. I'm just very sad. I have a broken heart. I have my broken heart.
Nancy Truppner is Eileen's sister. She said Eileen emigrated to the United States from Puerto Rico, where she worked for the government. Once in the U.S., she continued building a life for herself.
She was outgoing. She was calm. She was quiet. She was kind. She was a good person.
But the overwhelming depression following each of her children's births changed Eileen in a way she could not overcome.
She had her first child, and she went on the postpartum depression. When the second child, having the child so fast, then it was different. The depression was worse.
As her emotional and mental health struggles worsened, Eileen lost custody of her children.
Probably she didn't realize that she was sick. She didn't know that she was sick also, and where I cannot have my kids.
The last time Nancy heard from Eileen was August 1998. She wanted Eileen to come live with her, but Eileen believed she might be able to regain custody of her children and refused the offer. Eileen then vanished. Over the years, the family hired a private investigator, but never received definitive information about what became of Eileen.
But then you start wondering if she's alive or she's okay, or she's with somebody, but we didn't know. We didn't know. We didn't know.
BSO homicide detectives continued investigating this case, but it turned cold. Then, earlier this year, Nancy received a call from Detective Scott.
I say, do you find her? But I didn't know that she was dead. I think she was alive. So I was happy. But when he started talking and saying what happened to her, the story changes. The way she died when she was a kind person, she was so good, and she died the way she died, she not deserved that.
No one deserves that. And Detective Scott remains on his mission to find out who stole Eileen from her loved ones.
We actually have very good leads on this case. We do have a potential suspect on this case that we're looking at as well. What we're missing are small pieces of the puzzle as far as the timeline is concerned.
That timeline is critical to this case. Detectives want to speak with anyone who knew or crossed paths with Eileen Truppner between August 1998 and her murder in December 1998. Detective Scott hopes new information will lead to a connection between the potential suspect in the crime and Eileen Truppner.
If they can tell us anything about her life during that 4-month period, no matter how insignificant they may think it is, it could be what we're looking for to kind of connect the dots between our evidence, a potential suspect, and our victim.
Nancy Truppner values the effort Detective Scott and all the investigators have made over the years in trying to get justice for Eileen, the woman once known as Jane Doe, and who now finally has a name.
Bless his heart. I wish God give him the knowledge, the discernment that he needs to finish the case, to find out the person who did this, because Eileen deserves it. She needs to rest in peace too.